All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Um, for those of you who don't know, I'm Dr. Maiysha, founder of the Mind ReMapping Academy. And it's Wednesday, and normally I do these live streams on a Tuesday, but I actually kind of lost track of the days because of the holiday. I promised that I would give some more tips around reframing thought habits. So that is actually what we're talking about today. I hope that you all did enjoy your long weekend. For those of you who did get a long weekend, and let's dive right in. So last week, I believe it was last week. Last week, we talked about framing our thought habits for the year and the ways that we can begin to remap these thought habits um, moving forward to be able to meet our goals. And I talked about a few different ways to be able to shift our thought habits. And today I'm going to talk about specifically about reframing. And the reason I want to talk about reframing is because it's one of those things that's really simple and easy to do. It does require some intention, but it's probably something that you're already doing right now. The point of the work that I do in neurolinguistic programming is not always to teach people something that they didn't know, but to give the process by which you can do something with intention and effectively on a regular basis. And so many of you may have already heard about reframing, may know about reframing, may regularly use reframing. But what I want to talk about today is how you use this type of language pattern in order to shift negative thought patterns in the moment. Okay. And sometimes it does take a step back, depending on what type of processor you are. So I'm a person I test as an introvert, and then there are some other letters inside of that sequencing. But I'm the kind of person that typically likes to take a step back, think things over, and then come back with a response. And so my one of my areas of development is to be able to respond a little bit more in the moment. But there are some people who are rapid responders, and you could use the development of taking a step back and thinking about things before you respond. And in both cases, reframing can be effective. Um, this is a linguistic or a language technique or pattern that can be used with oneself, and it can actually be used externally when in conversation with others. So I frequently am reframing myself as a mom, and then also my clients and friends, because again, in conversation, if you're listening and you hear a thought pattern from someone else that you can automatically hear as disempowering, you can automatically hear as not true, but a perception that could be changed in that moment, you can effectively reframe and change a person's view. And that's what reframing is all about. It's about loosening the grip of an unhealthy or an unresourceful belief pattern, and sometimes change and like giving a different perspective in order to change the view. And sometimes just doing that alone causes a breakthrough and a transformation. Sometimes it takes a bit more. But it's planting a seed. If you're doing it in the moment, it could be planting a seed to something that is in effect more transformational in the future. So let's talk a little bit about the reframing process. Reframing is all it is. All it is giving a person another view and another perspective. And the way we use reframing in neurolinguistic programming is we use it to make change at the unconscious level. And what I mean by that is I think I've described this multiple times in these lives, is there's our conscious thought patterns, right? These are the things that we are aware of that we're thinking. And then there's the stuff underneath the surface, right? Some people call subconscious, we call it unconscious. The thing that's running us that we don't know is running us. And then there's the stuff that's like way deep in the ocean, right? That unconscious thought process that's way deep in the ocean. So depending on what the nature of the conversation is, you may just be loosening the belief pattern, but also you may be actually completely shifting a person's view. All right. So there's a couple of basic reframes that I'm going to share, types of reframes that I'm going to share, and then give you a couple of examples. And then after that, it's going to be up to you to take it out in the world. And I actually would love to hear if it's something that you already do, if it's something that you go out and you do, and then you come back and you share on this video. I want to hear, or you can message me and tell me, hey, I tried this and this is what happened. Whether you were successful or whether there were challenges, I would love to hear. So, the first kind of reframe, and by the way, these are some techniques I go into a lot more depth in when I do my live trainings, the mind remapping trainings that I talk about often. These are some of the just couple of the techniques that I go a lot more in depth in when I do these trainings, and I'm going to actually be giving you over the next few weeks more of these so you can get a taste of what you could learn. But first kind of reframe I want to talk to you about is context reframe. And what basically that is, it's probably very similar to what you think. It's when someone says something and you are changing the context of that thing. So, for example, if someone said, let's say if a lady is concerned about her weight and she says, "Oh, my belly is too fat." Right. Some maybe there are women out there, maybe possibly there are women out there who feel that way, and so we would think of what you would do in order to reframe something like that would be to think of, if you wanted to reframe something like that, right? Um, think of a context in which that situation actually is a good thing or a positive, rather. So, for example, oh, I want to have like a flat belly. Oh, my belly's too flat, too fat, or whatever. And a reframe might be, well, in some cultures, men really like women with a little bit more meat on the bone, right? Or I've heard this whole "my butt is too big" from certain women. I certainly don't subscribe to that, but in certain cultures, um, you know, it's actually seen as a sign of fertility, or why bigger hips is seen as a sign of fertility or a sign of whatever. So that's like it's a classic reframe that we talk about. But there are some even more practical reframes. So, for example, I actually am a person who in my family has been thought to be stoic. Now, the people who know me well know that I am not stoic. I can be fairly animated, but I have a fairly even temper, so I don't get riled up about much. It takes a lot, and so my family, they tend to be more emotionally expressive. Some of the members of my family, one of my sisters and my mom, they tend to be a little bit more emotionally um, expressive. And so I've been told that I'm too reserved, or I am reserved. And a reframe for that may be, well, in when you are um, dealing with a life or death situation, you need to be calm and reserved, right? Being calm and reserved is a good thing in the face of danger, or in the face of um, a life or death. So when I was in residency, and I used to be on call when there were emergencies where I had to save a life, bring people back to life, or what we call run a code, right? That's in medical terms. Um, that requires a certain equanimity, and it's something that is natural about me, and something that many people can practice and learn um, to acquire that skill. but it's just something that comes naturally. I don't get overly excited. So that's a different context for being reserved or calm or overly stoic, I guess would be the word. Um, Another contextual thing would be you're too outspoken, right? And I do know that in certain organizations, especially I've heard this from certain women that I've worked with who were for certain women physicians that I've worked with who were outspoken, that um, so they would be told you're too outspoken or too disruptive. Disruptive is a term in our organization that gets overly used, especially with women. That can be unpacked in a different live. However, so the context, what's a different situation where being outspoken would be a good thing, right? In leadership, any leadership position, being outspoken would be a good thing to be able to make change. Being outspoken when standing up for when there's an injustice being done, that would be a good thing. So when you're looking at reframing from a contextual standpoint, you're asking yourself before you reframe. Now you can reframe yourself. Like if someone's saying to you, "Oh, you're too disruptive," and sometimes when people say things to us enough times, then it can cause us to internalize that thing. And so, um, how can you reframe internally when someone says to you enough times, "You're too stoic," or "You're overly emotional," or "You're too disruptive"? How do you reframe that for yourself? Well, you look at, well, what's the contextual situation where that's appropriate? What's a contextual situation where it's a positive thing, where it's necessary to be outspoken or disruptive, right? You could say Rosa Parks was disruptive, right, when she would not go to the back bus. So, and then that transformed. That was huge in the civil rights era. So, when we talk about contextual reframes, usually you're hearing one is too something or not enough of something, and you ask yourself, what is a circumstance or situation in which that would be um, appropriate or even a positive? I'll give you another one. This is for the moms in the house and the parents in the house. My son is 7. And God love him. He is very persistent. He does not accept no for an answer easily, which can be, as a parent, sometimes very frustrating. However, the content and I have my mom crew, my mom friends, and we often talk about this, and laugh about this. The kids who are saying no and setting boundaries and all of these things. And one of the, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at a post by a girlfriend, a physician doc of mine, who um, she was talking about her, her daughter effectively setting a boundary, and the way she chronicled the story, it sounded like something my son would say. One of the things that I said is that, I personally had a very challenging time setting boundaries coming up, or coming out of a home, that kind of home that I came out of. And, the way I see it, out in the world, when my son grows up, that's one less thing that he will have to learn, is setting boundaries, right? Same thing with him being persistent and not accepting no for an answer. That is not necessarily a bad thing. If he decides to start his own business or out in the world as a business person, that could be very effective. Not necessarily seeing no as the final answer, right? Not seeing no as a failure. And speaking of failure, let's move to a different kind of reframe, which is a content reframe. What is that? What does that mean? That means you're changing the meaning of a behavior or a circumstance, right? So, one example, really good example of meaning reframe is how we make failure mean things that it doesn't actually mean. And y'all know I like to talk about failure a lot because we are always making failure mean stuff that it doesn't mean. When I say failure, I mean not reaching a particular goal or not getting the outcome that you want. And so when someone comes to me talking about a failure or something that was not achieved, what's a meaning that you could change failure into different from what your existing meaning is of it? So, some people would say if you fail to reach a goal, that just means you have more information about what not to do so that you get closer the next time or that you actually reach it the next time, right? So that's one way to reframe a failure. Um, I'm going to go for the parents again. So when um, my son, he takes kung fu. We both take kung fu, and one day during the class, we had to do like 50 sit-ups and 50 push-ups. And he's 7 and he's a thin lad. So uh, we were driving home and he says, "Oh, I'm never doing sit-ups again. My stomach is killing me." And I said to him, "Well, that just means that your muscles are getting stronger. They're rebuilding so that, you can your muscles will be much stronger the next time that you do your sit-ups." And he looks at me and he says, "Oh, well, I think I need to be doing sit-ups every day then." So what that did is it loosened the belief or actually shifted his belief because kids they're pliable. They learn so much faster than we grown-ups do. But it shifted the meaning for him of why his abs were hurting. So again, these are various ways that you can shift the meaning of a behavior or thought in order to, in the moment, reframe, right? Um, you know, I could actually do a content reframe on this thing with my son. So he's very persistent and he's always negotiating, trying to negotiate an outcome. And so, what I say to myself, this is how I reframe myself. Well, that just means that he will be an excellent salesperson when he grows up. So, you get the world of reframing with intention. So, this is just like intention reframing. You can change the context and you can change the meaning of an unresourceful thought or circumstance to have it occur differently in your mind, which when the reason this is so important, the reason I work so much with thoughts is because our thoughts set up our expectations, set up our actions, set up our communications with other people. And when we can reframe our thoughts before they actually come out of our mouth, or when we can effectively listen and reframe others who are going down the rabbit hole, right? They're circling the drain, as some people say, then we can make a huge difference in um, we can make a huge difference in the outcome of a circumstance just by changing our thinking and how we see things, right? Just by we can make a huge difference in another person's actions by shifting their view. Imagine if a person is feeling like they're a failure because maybe they started a business or maybe they started a project and the project did not go the way they thought it was going to go. And so, you know, a person is automatically making that mean that it's never going to work. When all that is just gathering information. And so a reframe makes a difference between a person quitting and never trying again and a person just gathering the missing data and trying again with that missing data to succeed. That's huge. That's huge whether you're a business owner, it's huge whether you're a parent, it's huge whether you're in an organization with a team. It's huge. So I invite you to go out in the world, and this does require that you listen. See, this is part of the issue is we're not always listening to understand, listening to learn, and listening to empower. Most of the time, we're listening to respond. But when you start listening, really listening to learn, and when I say listening, I mean listening to not only others, but listening to the things that are coming out of your mouth, listening to the structure of your speaking, then you'll start to catch little things that you can reframe for yourself. And when you practice reframing yourself, and this goes for, assumptions, judgments, and beliefs, when you practice reframing yourself, then you'll start listening more keenly to others, and it become automatic for you to be able to reframe others when you hear the same mess come out of their mouth. So that's what I wanted to share today is we are thinking about how we begin to shift our thought habits, shift belief patterns, or at least loosen our grip on unresourceful belief patterns in ourselves and others. This is a very simple, easy, in the moment technique that you can apply. And, there's tons of reframes, right? There's tons of frames that you can use. I'm just teaching you to today. We go into more of those things in the trainings, but these are two easy ones, changing the content, changing what something means, changing the context, like what's another circumstance where that behavior or that thing or that circumstance would not be a negative but would be a positive. Whether you're an individual, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, this is massive in education. Whether you're an administrator, whether you're a CEO, an organizational leader, I want you and I invite you to begin looking at where are the ways that as you're listening to people, as you're listening to your leaders, as you're listening to your managers, as you're listening to your teams, as you're listening to your staff, that you can begin to reframe negative thoughts and behaviors. And I invite you to do that, and then share with me the outcome. Share with me what you've learned. You can share with me right in the comments, or you can message me if you would like it to be more private, of course. And listen, if you are interested in learning more about the depth of language, these intricacies of language that really make a difference in how we think, perceive, act, and interact with others, then you can reach out to me. Now, my website is mindremappingacademy.com. If you're with me here on Instagram, you can just click the bio link and it'll take you to all of the options. If you are with me here on LinkedIn, then there's, I think the website's right there at the top of my profile, but you can also on both accounts message me directly if you have questions, whether it's questions about this particular technique, questions about any technique that I've talked about or any topic I've talked about in the past. I invite you to go listen to those. Or if you want to know more about the trainings that I do at the community level or at the organization level. Okay. So I will not be here next week because guess what? I will be in training next week. I have my Mind ReMapping 7-day intensive happening next week. So I'll be taking off. But the following week, we're going to do another technique. And I've done it before, but I'm doing it in a different context, in the context of reframing habits, and that is anchoring. Anchoring. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that can shift internal state. So anchoring is about shifting internal state, and when sometimes when we have a thought, it produces an emotion, and that emotion can take us down the rabbit hole. It can perpetuate other thoughts. It can perpetuate the cycle. But if you have an anchor, then you can utilize that anchor, and that anchor can be a physical anchor or it can be a facial anchor. This particularly is effective with procrastination with focus and concentration, and with feeling motivated and empowered. So we'll talk a little bit about anchoring and how that can impact um, our internal state, which impacts our thought patterns. And then after that, the week after that, I believe, we'll finish it up with an actual exercise to help shift and change beliefs in the moment. So then we're going to move on to something else because, I've always got something else. All right. So you all have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And of course, if you want more of this, you can always check out my podcast, The Black Mind Garden. And I look forward to having you or seeing you all, and maybe seeing some of you all in the future in the training. Take care. Namaste.